Thank you very much. I hope people didn't think I was running away from the presentation. My body is surprised to get to a place where it is not sweating. So yeah. So I'll begin by saying that we can defeat AIDS by achieving universal access, and that sustainability must not mean that the Banda, who is our president, and the Obama and other leaders' administrations failed to finish the task. So we must finish what we promised to do. So we must so we can't reduce contributions before landmark US pledges or other donors' pledges to fight AIDS are fulfilled. And also we can't cap treatment enrollment until universal access is achieved. We can't conservatively develop budgets that will send our people to the grave. 14 years ago when I tested for HIV, there was no treatment. I had to go into a war-torn country to find money, not for treatment because there was no treatment, but to find money for my funeral. Because I knew if I died, someone was going to blame me for my promiscuity. So we must know even today that whilst we think this is expensive, civil society in SADC region or in Africa believes that it will only be expensive the first few years. And once people stop getting infected, then it will be cheaper because we won't need extra resources for new patients. What we will need is only resources to sustain the few, those of us who are already HIV positive. So what do we mean when we say ARV-based prevention? Now I'm deliberately changing the language and not treatment as prevention because we work with community people and they don't understand some of this jargon. So when we speak to community members, we say ARV-based prevention. I will not spend much of my time on this because we already know, but some HIV prevention options, antiretroviral drugs that are primarily used as treatment for people who are already infected with HIV. Some of these methods, we already know them. 2 hours I spent in this meeting yesterday, and this morning I was surprised. Is it for real that we are debating this subject? Is it true that we don't know the truth? If cost is a problem, then let's name it. Let's say it is cost. We don't have any more resources to spend. Let us not say there is not enough research. It has worked. In PMTCT, we know. Everyone argued in South Africa with nevirapine. There was no research. Some brave doctors and clinicians went ahead. And today, we have protocols and guidelines implementing the same facts that came up without research was ever conducted. So are we being realistic when we say we need more research? Are we sure we don't know that ARVs can prevent transmission? Are we being honest with ourselves? So these are some of the examples. We know post-exposure prophylaxis works, meaning that it can work even when we give it to other people. Prevention of vertical transmission, the same thing. We know that at individual level, we already know that individuals who take prescribed ARVs regularly every day have a reduced amount of virus. I get new arguments. What about adherence? 14 years I've lived with HIV. 6 years of continuously taking ARVs because it was available in Zambia. But the first few years, when I sold almost everything that I had to take the only tablet before I knew how it worked, to keep myself alive, I wouldn't want to die today. What we need civil society for, what we need the communities for, is to provide timely information to everyone because no one wants to die. So this is what we should get. Give information to people and they won't want to die. No one wants to die. We still have families that we are looking after. We still have children that we are looking after. So there is no point of us saying people might not adhere. Cost, we can come up with other innovative, and when we talk about Africa, we should not talk about Africa in isolation. Most of us here, if not all of us, have been to Africa. And we see how priorities are misapplied. Instead of setting up priorities that will save lives, we've seen our politicians buying luxurious, expensive vehicles that they use to commit more corrupt practices. So we should not end by saying that Africa is poor and Africa has no resources. We need more pressure, and we need the people seated here to support the efforts that civil society and communities are trying to exert on our African leaders. We can find the money. Donors' monies should not be a replacement of local funding in Africa. It should be a supplement. But we have given an impression as donors that donor funding is a replacement of local resourcing, which is wrong. And our leaders are finding it easy to spend the monies, the little resources that is there, the way they want. So, on this slide, I just want to say that I think one of the best arguments is that massive testing campaigns would make more people aware of their status. HIV-positive people could then reduce their risk taking and seek treatment. Both a decrease in risk taking and a decrease in viral load as a result of successful treatment could decrease the rate of HIV spread. I don't think I need to wait for another research. I don't think I need to wait for another study, because I know in the deepest parts of our hearts, we know this is true. Someone once asked me whether it's true we are saying keep the promise and stop AIDS, or we are saying stop the promise and keep AIDS. Because AIDS has become one of the world's most highly employment sector. So what are we saying? Is it for real? We need research. Are we sure? I keep asking. Several questions have been asked, but when shall we answer them? Questions like, is treatment as prevention just a poorly conceived biomedical intervention for a problem as socially, psychologically, and politically complex as HIV/AIDS? Or that it will divert much needed funds from HIV treatment for treatment and financial funds from other key development areas? And many other questions you'll find on my slides. Is this real? And I'm not speaking for myself. These are the questions that civil society in Africa and other ordinary community members are asking. Is it true? When we say engagement of civil society or communities, we say both population-based HIV testing and any possibly successful treatment as prevention requires the active and meaningful involvement of civil society from the beginning of the research planning to implementation. There is now a confusion amongst people living with HIV. Some are saying we should say greater involvement, some are saying we should say meaningful involvement. Because when policies are developed, I want to thank WHO, even midway my presentation, for beginning to meaningfully involve communities in such kind of meetings. So we want to be involved from the beginning. And then we want to move on and see if implementation, because we can't not monitor if we do not understand where the policies are coming from. We cannot monitor that because we don't understand. We were not seated here. We didn't listen to the arguments. I remember in one WHO meeting, we spent 4 hours trying to define what CAPO means. And so if someone is reading it in a document, they won't understand that there was that huge discussion around it. I have one recommendation to make. We must keep the promise to achieve universal access to testing and treatment because that will eradicate new infections. We know this presentation or paper that was presented in Vienna, and that is enough evidence for us. In light of new data, the promise of universal access is more important now than ever, and we can't turn back now. In 2007, for every 2 people put on treatment, 5 new people were infected. Transmission rates of HIV, again, there is no research, but working in the field and having lived with HIV for a long time, I know, and we know, that people that transmit HIV, once someone is tested and they undergo the counseling that we go through, you cannot risk having unprotected sex. But it is people that test and go back without adequate support, without adequate counseling, that go back and do that. But if they're enrolled and counseling is provided, then we know that even the few that will risk, they will. I'll end by saying there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that the tunnel is short. If only we can do what we know, because we know that it works. Thank you.